Jordan Bohannon, Jared Stansberry. It's Jared and J-Bo on Iowa Everywhere. This is Iowa Everywhere.
Welcome into the podcast. We good over there? Everything good?
Yeah. Did you hear that whole conversation?
No, I heard the toilet flushed, and then you going like this in the bag, telling it to rush across. Yeah, that was funny. That was funny. All right, man, we got a lot to get to on today's podcast. It's been a hell of a couple days. You were up late fighting with the trolls on Twitter on Sunday night after Iowa's lost to Northwestern. Fran McCaffrey got ejected. Patrick McCaffrey got a technical. And Courtney Green and what's this guy's name? How do you say this last name? Paul Zelk. They found their way into the crosshairs. Where I'm gonna give you the floor for a moment to explain some of the things that you said on Twitter.
Yeah. So those that did not watch the Iowa Northwestern game, they were getting blown out, and we'll start with the ejection. Coach McCaffrey got ejected from the game, and a familiar face was on the officiating crew, Courtney Green. Anyone that knows me or follows me on Twitter or follows Big Ten basketball knows how bad an official Courtney Green is. That is a proven fact. There's no bias for me having bad blood with him, anything like that. Paul Zelk is also a notoriously horrible official that is talked about immensely in the Big Ten. Those two crew on officiating crew for the Iowa Northwestern game. Iowa lost by 20 plus. I don't know what the final score was. That is not what I was blaming anything on. That was officials' fault. That was Iowa not making shots, Iowa turning the ball over. That's why they lost. I simply stated on Twitter that having those two officials continually be assigned to Iowa games is a disgrace and an embarrassment to the officiating office with the Big Ten, because I've been on the inside for 6 years. I know that the conversations that's been held on the court and off the court with these two officials, there is a serious bias issue with these two officials and how they officiate Iowa teams and Fran McCaffrey. Whether you're someone that's a fan of it or not, I've seen it on the inside and the outside now. Is a proven fact.
Why do you think it is? Why do you think that's?
Well, there's been numerous controversial calls by these two officials during Iowa games. So let's first off start with that. Fran's been ejected numerous times by those two certain guys before. That's also a proven fact. Courtney Green, I'll state this. Actually, I'll start with the Big Ten officiating office because I said this at the beginning of the year on this podcast, Jared, when I called out Brad Davidson on Twitter for being a mark guy, and everyone lost their shit and started trolling me and saying I have no idea what I'm talking about because Boyage just came out and said he never said that. Every single year, Boyage he was an old, I don't know what his title was.
I imagine he was the Big Ten coordinator of officials.
Yes, coordinator of officials.
Yeah.
And you meet with the Big Ten teams prior to the season, blah, 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 tell them all the emphasis, the new rules. He stayed the marked guys in the league, and they were Anthony Cowan and Brad Davidson at the time. I simply came out and said something after last year that he was a marked guy. Boyage has declined in an interview and said he never said that. That was, first off, a lie. So that starts off with how bad the officiating office is in the Big Ten. He's no longer with the Big Ten. After the Courtney Green call, so we're going back to Courtney Green. After the call he made at Rutgers on for Ron Harper to hit 2 free throws, and we lost by 2. Courtney Green called Coach McCaffrey after the game and stated that he made a problem or made a mistake during that game. He missed a call, and it was simply a mistake. He did an over the phone apology to Coach McCaffrey for blowing us the game. So that right there is another reason why I continue to make a mockery of Big Ten officiating, because shit like that happened. And Fran was obviously respectful. He said after it happened, he said that he called him. He wanted to let us know that he made a mistake and he shouldn't have made that call. But that goes down to the accountability issue, right? With the Big Ten, the problem I have. There is no accountability with these guys when they make issues or make mistakes. Sorry, when they make mistakes during games. You look back at the beginning of the Big Ten play. There's been numerous calls by Courtney Green. I think there's one at Indiana. There's one at Nebraska as well when Purdue was playing. Courtney Green didn't blow his whistle, and it should have been a foul. There is simple fixes they can make, but they continue not to make them. And one of them starts with assigning certain officials to these teams and not having a bias, because that greatly impacts how the game is officiated. And whether you like it or not, that is a proven fact.
I mean, they're people,
What?
They're people. Like,
Yes.
it happens. Yeah.
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 I just think it's hard for me to understand why people think that's not a real thing, that there's a bias with these officials. You know damn well there's certain guys and coaches that have biases against these officials, and they have issues when they get assigned for these games, and that already starts off on the wrong foot because of past history. You can't tell me that Coach McCaffrey doesn't think about the call Courtney Green made at Rutgers, and Courtney Green doesn't think about the call he made at Rutgers a year ago to ruin. That was a huge game for us seeding wise in the Big Ten, and greatly impacted how we got seeded in the NCAA tournament. So that's all I'm getting at. And I don't think it should be that big of a controversy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people need to, people treat officials sometimes like they aren't human beings. They're these non-biased robots that just are out there. They're like the umpires. We're talking about we're going to replace the umpires with the cameras. Like they act like that's what we have actually for officials sometimes, which is not the case. And when you've got officials who do games for, I don't know how long Courtney Green or Paul Zelk's been an official, but I mean, you think about some of these guys, been officials for a very long time, 20 plus years, 30 years. And just over time, especially when you've got coaches who are going to be around for 20 plus or 30 years, like you're going to build up a relationship / a rivalry / whatever it might be with these certain guys. And that's also the nature of the jobs. To think that that's not true is just asinine. It's just dumb, because what world is that ever not the case, where two professions that are supposed to be warring on some level do not butt heads, like always. And then in that scenario, you're going to have people who take it too far and who make it personal. And if that's what you are alleging, I don't know enough about it to argue either way, but it just, there are times you have to wonder, you have to ask a question sometimes when people continue to do the same things over and over again. Okay, does this person have malicious intent, or are they just fucking up?
I've seen on the court conversations being had, like I said a couple minutes ago, of certain officials in the Big Ten have dialogue with my old coach, Coach McCaffrey, and in the same game, when he is telling Coach McCaffrey to shut up, he lets another head coach do the exact same thing, get out of the box, run on the court, scream at the same official, scream at another guy in the officiating crew, and not have anything happen to him.
Remember when I came back from the Big 12 media days, and told you that Curtis Shaw, the Big 12 director of officials, said that they weren't going to assign NCAA tournament games to officials who don't call technicals on coaches for leaving the coaching box?
Yeah.
That was the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. I don't think I've seen a single technical called on a coach that would obviously mean that then none of these officials are going to get to work the NCAA tournament, because none of them have been calling these technicals. So might not have any officials left to do the tournament at this point.
Right.
It just is stupid, dude. It's dumb because, and here's what I was going to present this to you. I have an idea that we can kind of walk through to fix this. It needs to be where there is not just this random old head official who is your conference officiating director who, whether he's assigning the games to people or whatever it is, like he's like a one-man crew. That cannot be the case. That cannot be the case when there is as much money on the line as what there is in these games, when there's as much on the line for these teams and getting to the tournament and all that kind of stuff. Man, you think about Big 10 basketball, you think about Big 12 basketball, SEC basketball, Pac-12 basketball. This is some of the biggest basketball on the planet, you know. And when we've got people who are going to be officials, why would we not want to make sure that we are getting the best officials for the best games every single time? Which means, why are these leagues not employing their own officials? And say like the Big 12. The Big 12's got the fewest teams, so this is why it's easier to do this. You say, all right, on any given night during the conference season, we're going to have 5 games at most. So we need to have 15 officials or make it 20, whatever. So you've got a couple alternates. You can give guys some nights off, whatever it may be. And then you're going to alternate those teams all throughout the teams. And the most that anybody's going to get one team is like 3 times. You know, in a given year, you're going to get the same official 3 times. Every official has their own team. So you're with the same 2 guys for the entire season, and you build up a rapport with them. You build up, oh, I know this guy, you know, when the ball's down here, I know this guy's not seeing this spot, so I need to keep a better eye on this spot in addition to my spot. And it's like, and that's what, in my mind, it's like building a basketball team, you know. To build these officiating crews should be pretty similar, because you need them to be able to follow the action at the same pace that the players are able to play the action. And when you've got just 3 dudes who have traveled 10,000 miles across the country in the last week, all of them are coming from different places. All of them have been doing different games. None of them have any real experience together outside of maybe that one game they did at Grambling 6 weeks ago. Then you're going to get dog shit officiated games. Like, that's just the way that it's going to be. And so we have to figure out a way to get it to where these guys are, 1, not working as much, 2, are being paid to the amount that they need to be able to make this their job, to make it to where people can put time into this, into making it better. And then when you've got your 20 officials, you can sit there and if you have a game that's going on, or you have a particular team that's doing a certain thing, and you say, hey, we all need to sit down, we all need to hop on a Zoom, we got to talk about how we're going to officiate this thing, you know, and we're going to work through it together as a conference, and we're going to figure out the answer. And then every single official in here is going to go and officiate it the same exact way. And that's it. If you don't officiate it that way, you're not going to be coming back next year. You're not going to get your cushy job in the Big 12. You're not going to have fun doing Division II games, you know? And that's what it needs to be. There needs to be some sort of actual infrastructure for this, not just the refs are independent contractors. They make their schedule. They can do whatever the hell they want to and fly all over the place and do all these kinds of things. But that requires the conferences making an investment and putting the money into it and saying, we want to do this the right way, and not we want to do this whatever the easy way is, where you just let these officials do whatever the hell they have going on. Thoughts?
But you made the number one point, the accountability, right? That comes with accountability. There is the infrastructure they have now. There is no accountability whatsoever from when anything happens. We get a fucking phone call from Courtney Green after he makes a mistake that costs us a huge game on a top 4 seeding in the Big Ten tournament and on NCAA tournament seeding. Like, no, like find a way to find suspension, something, because that's what it should come down to. When there's that much money they're being paid to these refs, there's that much on the line for these games, and they can just talk freely. They don't have to answer any interviews. They just go on to their flight and ref another game across the country.
I mean, that's the kind of mistake that should disqualify. I'm just speaking generally, but something that costs someone a game is the kind of mistake. And if you can admit that it was a mistake, no one would ever admit a mistake if it had any ramifications to it. But you get what I'm saying, where it's like they could have some sort of process, automatic disqualification from officiating the Final Four.
Correct.
And for every mistake that you make, you're losing a round. If you want to do the NCAA tournament, you better not lose. You better not have 6 game losing mistakes in the year. Otherwise, you're not going to get to call games in the NCAA tournament. We need too many officials to say that they're not going to be able to do anything. But it's like, you're not getting the best. You're not going to go and do the Big 12 tournament or the Big 10 tournament. You're not going to go and do the Final Four, wherever the hell the Final Four is. Like, man, you blew your deal, you know? Like, clearly you're not one of the best officials in college basketball if you're costing people games with what you're doing, because you're supposed to not even hardly be here. We know that the officials are doing their best job when we don't notice them. Even if they are making calls, if nobody sits there and it's like, man, these officials really freaking stink tonight, like that's the only gauge of it. And if the officials are really good, I'm sure you might notice that, but it's like you have to accept the fact that, hey, I might show up some places some nights and people might not know who I am, and that's perfectly okay. That's the way my job should be, And instead it feels like every time, Doug Sermons is another one who does this. Every time Doug Sermons shows up to do a game, you're going to know that Doug Sermons is in the house. Every time. And it doesn't matter what it's going to be. He's going to call a flop on someone. He's going to call a bench warning on someone. He's going to go to the monitor. Like, he's going to do everything that he possibly can to make sure hey, who runs the show here tonight, And that's so stupid. It makes me sick because that's not the way that the officials are supposed to be, and that's not the way that it goes against the, I guess, like basics of like what an official is supposed to be. Like, the official's not the police officer of the game, Do your job and go home. That's it, because nobody's here to see you.
And the level of variance, I think this is what it comes down to. I love the idea because that creates a great camaraderie between the officials. I love it because that should be more worked like a team. But the level of variance and that is occurring with officiating throughout the years, especially when I was going through it, it changes so much. One game, it could be great officiating. Like, obviously, they're going to make mistakes. We're not asking for perfectly called games. We're asking for games that aren't shifted dramatically by how it's being officiated from one half to the other. And right now, we're looking at the officiating variance continue to astronomically separate from game to game. And that's not
half to half. Half to half. Yes.
From timeout to timeout.
Yes.
And that's not acceptable. I mean, you look at the reason Fran was ejected, I was assuming is because he was out of his box and he's going to talk to the official after he got a tee. I'm assuming that's what occurred. How many times in the Big Ten have we seen that happen from another coach? And that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Izzo gets out of his box 24/7, never gets called for a tee. Underwood screams at officials just like Coach McCaffrey does, and he doesn't get any amount near as a tease as Coach McCaffrey does. I'm not saying what McCaffrey did not warrant a tee, but that did not warrant an ejection. And that ejection is why I'm saying there's a bias between those officials. That's why it occurred.
What do you think of Patrick's technical?
Again, ridiculous, and I think there's a bias because all he said was, "That's so bad." I talked to him on FaceTime after the game.
If you had to guess, did he get it because of what he said, or was it because he said it while the guy was shooting the free throw?
That's idiotic. They would call it technical because the guy was shooting a free throw.
Okay. I just didn't know. I was wondering what the reasoning you had heard was.
Someone replied to me and said, "Oh, it's because the opponent was shooting a free throw and he distracted the player, and that warranted a tee because
people talk up there all the time." Yeah.
I'm like, I've been on the paint on during a free throw and listened to what's been said to the shooter.
What do you think this place is? The fucking public library?
Yeah, like everyone says something while you're at the free throw line. If there would be a technical every single time at the free throw line if that was a rule that was enforced at every game. So that is a idiotic comment. But for him just saying that's so bad and getting a technical foul for that shows right there, one, the bias, and two, the ego that is continuing to be had with officiating. Because at the end of the day, him saying that's so bad, I mean, that's opinion, but if you get that butthurt over it to get a call a technical foul on a player for that just terminates the game.
Yeah, that's tough. I wasn't sure. I mean, I figured he had to have said something. I don't know. Do you think it could have just been like one of those things in the ref's mind? He's like, all right, it's like accumulation effect more than anything. Like, not that what McCaffrey said or what Patrick said, not when he said it. It's just like in that moment, the avalanche is already rolling down the hill and that dude's just ready to hand out some technicals, Like, yeah. I think that's probably what it is more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good argument to be had because that does happen. I mean, it's just like going along with how the game's called, right? Like, a game's going to be called differently. Like, you have to realize, okay, maybe you can't hand check as much this game because they're calling it this game. So yeah, I mean, I would agree with that as well. That could have been a similar situation, but again, I still think there's an issue with those two officials.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they don't get another Iowa game this year. I would probably not bank on that, even though there's only a couple games left. But I guess we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. All right,
But also, last thing, the next game, because I had a lot of Iowa State fans in my mentions.
Uh-huh.
A lot, Jared, talking about what I said about the officiating. I guarantee you there's going to be a game in the near future. Iowa State's going to have some really poor calls. Don't come running to me to have your back. I won't do it. I've tried to get along. I've tried.
So no. Listen, you're telling me right now that if it comes down to it and Iowa State has the officials go against them, you're siding with the officials.
I'm not siding with anyone. I'm saying I won't back you. I'm not going to come out publicly and say anything because
you'll be a neutral third party
I'm
at that
playing
point.
Switzerland because of everything I heard in my mentions these last 2 days, Jared. That's all I'm saying.
I knew Sunday night was intense when I looked at your Twitter to see what your tweets were, and you hadn't tweeted in 2 days. I was like, oh boy.
Dude, I'm too busy dealing with. The worst part is the two followers, because I know damn well they created an account the last 10 minutes ago, and they wanted to tweet that because they were too afraid to tweet on their main account. Tweet it from your main account, okay? I'm tired of the trolls.
Remember when Kevin Durant had all the burners?
Smart man.
That was legendary. It was a legendary moment. I wonder if Cyclone Larry has a burner that he's been tweeting at you. I bet he does. I'm like 95% sure they probably does. Because he tweets about you all the time wanting you to unblock him, man. It's like he loves you more than anything.
Do we need to make another bet? I
think we do.
If
I'm trying to think.
If Iowa State wins the Big 12 tournament, I'll block him.
Oh, jeez. Iowa State's not winning the Big 12 tournament, I can tell you right now. So you're not going to have to unblock him.
That's the bet. If they win the Big 12 tournament, Cyclone Larry, I will unblock you.
There we go. All right. Well, speaking of Big Ten officiating controversies, we've got another one. This one comes from Codeman00 on goldenblack.com on the Knucklehead Central message board.
This is an insane start.
Yeah, this is a Purdue from a Purdue fan. He said, quote, I honestly think that the Big Ten saw us running away with the Big Ten title, being 3-4 games ahead, and made the call to the officials to fix the situation and group the teams back up. Once that issue was corrected, the officials were told to go back to regular officiating. I really hate to think it's true, but it sure appears like it happened. It's the only explanation for all of the sudden calling the games completely different for 3-4 games and switching back. The motive is more compelling games, more favorable news coverage, and more teams in the NCAA tournament. Do you think that the Big Ten is fixing games against the number one team in the nation in order to get more teams into the NCAA tournament?
No, I don't. I don't.
Do you think that the Big Ten benefits more if Purdue's the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament, or if they get Maryland in as a 12 seed?
I would go down that rabbit hole and maybe have some sort of belief in it if
it didn't come from Cannonball 00 on knuckleheadcentral.com.
No, it's not even that. I'm trying to word this that makes sense. If there has been a change in officiating to benefit Big Ten and teams in the NCAA tournament, then I would agree with that. But this is just an absurd take. Absurd take. Anyone that thinks they're rigging so Purdue would lose, if anything, they would rig it so they would
win. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If anything, they would rig it so that the National Player of the Year can win games and Purdue can be the number one team in the nation going into the NCAA tournament. And anybody who would think differently is either a Purdue fan or an idiot. Like, those are the only two ways to think that that's and I'm not saying that if you're a Purdue fan, you're an idiot. You're just biased. That killed me, though. And I knew that I was going to tie into our conversation today. So I was like, the Big Ten is really up to something here. they're not only trying to screw Iowa, but they're trying to screw Purdue too. So
they're up to a lot of no good, but that is not one of them.
That's a jailable offense if they're fixing games against Purdue. That's a
put that cannonball put him right in the jail cell with Courtney Green.
Oh, man. All of our college basketball conversation on the podcast is brought to you by Sweet Caroline's Kitchen and Cocktails on Main Street in Ames. It's the perfect place to go before or after Iowa State games, anytime the Cyclones are on the road or anytime the Hawkeyes are in action. It's a great spot for late night fun with a Southern-inspired menu with a great collection of burgers, sandwiches, wings, and, of course, Caroline's famous fried chicken. The atmosphere is incredible with plenty of TVs to watch any of the games on your radar, and there's a party room available for rent for your next big gathering. That's Sweet Caroline's Kitchen and Cocktails at 316 Main Street in Ames. All right, let's flip it over to Iowa State here for just a minute. Iowa State with a loss to Texas last night in Austin. 3 games left on the schedule, back home against Oklahoma and West Virginia, and then back on the road against Baylor before the Big 12 tournament. Jordan, I was looking at some stuff this week, and this is pretty incredible. Even after this recent stretch that Iowa State has been on, if they win these next 2 home games, Iowa State will finish above 500 in Big 12 play for the first time since 2016-2017, which feels like yesterday, but also feels like a lifetime ago. And that's where I think I want to start this is I think there's some people who are frustrated right now with Iowa State. I think there's some people who are maybe disappointed in the way Iowa State has finished the season. I think understandably so when they've lost, I think, 4 of their last 5. But I think there needs to be some perspective as well that people need to remember where this program is coming from. And even last year when they had what was a wildly successful year by the standards going into the season, this was also a wildly successful year by the standards of what they were facing during going into the season. And that's why I brought up that stat that if they win these next 2 home games, they'll fit in. Even if you lose to Baylor on a week from Saturday, you finish 10-8, and they haven't finished they have not finished better than 9-9 since 2016-2017. So still a lot out there for this team, even if they can't live up to everybody's obviously very realistic expectation to go undefeated and win the national championship every single year.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you put a program in perspective like that, you got to give a lot of credit to TJ because he hasn't really had a lot of time. I mean, he inherited such a terrible spot with Iowa State basketball, and where you guys are at now, I mean, I understand why people are upset, but you also have to realize everything that has been given to your fan base so far. To go to a Sweet 16, to have this chance to be a really great seed again this year, I mean, not a lot of teams in the country can say they've had potential back to – I mean, I still think they're going to be a Sweet 16 team, but potential back-to-back Sweet 16 teams. Not a lot of programs can do that. Hardly any.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I did the whole radio circuit today. It was on Sirius and then was on a couple other things, and they kept asking me about that stuff, and I was just like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's just hard to be mad, man. This team went 0-20 or 0-18 2 years ago. And Iowa State basketball probably has never been in a better position right now than what it is right now, you know. And I think it's just unfortunate that, there might be 15, 20 teams that I would feel really confident saying are better than Iowa State. And that's a big might, 15 to 20 maybe.
And those teams are not a lot of difference.
No, and the unfortunate thing is like 6 of them are in their league.
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden you're playing so many good teams and there's not that many teams that are better than you, but the problem is that like all of them play in the same league together. And that's why, I mean, it's so astounding. Like every time they show that number on the games where it's the NET rating, in the Big 12's average NET rating is half of what everybody else's league is, and it's just like, it's just a gauntlet, man, and I don't think anybody can be mad at Iowa State. Like, just like no one should be mad at Baylor or nobody should be mad at Kansas or nobody should be mad at Texas if one of their teams like loses a couple games. Everybody's going to lose a couple games. Like, it just happens, it's a good league and there's a lot of good teams. There's a lot of good coaches. And right, Iowa State's got a really good coach and got a really good team right now too. And I can tell you right now, there's a lot of people who are going to be worried about where Iowa State's going in the future. So I just wanted to say that because I think that there are some people who are losing sight of what the goals were coming into the season. The possibility of going to the NCAA tournament was the goal. It was like, let's be on the bubble. If they can be on the bubble again, that's a success. This team is going to be like a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. That's a success. I don't care what anybody else says. But last night I was actually thinking of something that I wanted to bring up to you because you had some good analysis a couple weeks ago that I remembered. Right now, Gabe Kalsher, not playing very well. Really is doing too much, trying to take a lot of really difficult shots, hunting some difficult shots. And you brought something up after, I can't remember if it was after the TCU game or the Oklahoma game or which one it was, but you said your biggest concern was how many of those shots that Iowa State's making are really difficult shots. And I think that right now you're seeing some of that stuff come back to bite them a little bit, where I think they're hunting those difficult shots way too much right now for rather than just sometimes you just have to take tough shots. Like right now they are taking tough shots early in the shot clock, which is not ideal for this team.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I can definitely attest to because, I mean, it's just a fact here that I played on basically 6 years straight of a team that was a top offensive team in the country. So I know, I would like to think I have a lot of analysis and knowledge of what a good offense looks like. And defense might be a little different because defense, we weren't as high, but Iowa State's flip-flop. But the games at the beginning of the year, you're looking at Iowa State and their offense, like UNC, for example. Caleb Grill had a phenomenal game. There's some tough shots he made, and not saying they're relying on that, like he had a high hand, they're going to him. But when you do that at a long time frame for your season, you're going to have long dry spells because that's not something you can rely on for your whole season. You got to rely on driving kick, working the shot clock, going down to 5 seconds, getting to the foul line, getting to the free throw line. You can't be, forcing mid-range shots. I think that Gabe Kalsher has been forcing, or pull-up threes.
Yeah, the threes is the issue. Yes. I think last night he took 14 shots, 11 of them were three-pointers, and that's never been the formula for Gabe's success. He's got to be in attack mode.
Right, and he's a guy I played against, so I know, like, when I see him play well, I know he's attacking the basket. He's getting to the foul line. He's drawing fouls. He's being aggressive with the ball, getting in the paint. Like, that's when he's at his best, and that will open up his open three-point shots. Like, he's not a guy to come in and pull up threes within 4 seconds of the shot clock, and I think that's when that happens, that's a recipe for disaster. And I think obviously Coach TJ is a smart guy, and he realizes that, and that's why I've always been saying this season that they're going to be fine. They're going to figure it out because they've done it already. They just got to eliminate those games where they start relying on those types of those movements.
Right. Yeah, and it's a difference between like feast or famine, relying on difficult shots, and like sometimes you just need to make a tough shot to be able to get over the hump. And right now, Iowa State is a team that just needs to make tough shots to get over the hump and is doing too much taking tough shots, trying to be a hero sometimes. I mean, I think the perfect example of this is North Carolina. When they get really hot, we saw what can happen last year in a 3-week span when that team was on fire, making really tough shots. But man, when they try and live and die by tough shots, we're seeing what is happening right now. That team is not very good, and might not even make the NCAA tournament right now because they live and die on their guards making tough shots. And that's where the thing that's so frustrating about Iowa State's team is, and it's like, I appreciate this a lot about watching Iowa play. The post entry of the guys in the program and the ability to dump the ball into the post, it couldn't be more night and day. Like, Iowa's guys are so good at being able to get that ball in there and making those good passes and making sure that they're going to get through and getting good seals and all that kind of stuff. Iowa State's guys are not good at it. Not good. So many turnovers in post entry. And that really negates one of the advantages they've had, where Oshun's been playing really good ball lately. Last night he was 5 of 7 from the field with one of the 2 misses being a 3-pointer that he took in the first half. So from 2, he's 5 for 6. Around the rim, he didn't miss a shot around the rim. and you can't even get him the ball because you can't make a post entry pass, you know? And then when you get late into a shot clock and you need somebody to force something up, instead of having that outlet that you can drop it down to your big man and let him try and get an easy look at, from close to the rim, all of a sudden one of your guards has to play hero ball and make something happen when that's not the kind of team that you are. And so it's like these little things that are holding them back, that if they can clean some of those things up, we can start seeing this team put up a bunch of points again, but they have to figure out a way to be able to clean those things up.
Yeah, and to go off that Iowa point, if you look at, and this is something that I think Iowa State can do better at, if you look at Iowa's offense, I mean, you just watch them, even on games, they're struggling. Yeah, they take some tough shots at times, but you realize they have a philosophy that's been so set in stone by Coach McCaffrey. Obviously, the motion offense is so hard to guard because you can't scout it. It's so random. But every time down the floor, we're pushing in and the big guy's running down the floor. And our first option is always looking at the guy in the middle, at the front of the basket and touching the paint. Like, we want to touch the paint every single possession. And that's the ultimate recipe for success, because that opens up so much. Once the ball gets into the paint, guys collapse, you kick out, you can drive. And I think that's something Iowa State can do a little better job of, is not rushing that first decision, right? They drive and kick, they touch the paint, they drive again. They continuously do that, and that will open up so many more instead of taking that first good shot and making it a great shot. And I think Iowa, through the years, Coach McCaffrey has been a master at having his teams do that.
Yeah, and especially with a team like Iowa State, like, I don't care if it takes them forever to get into their set. The more you've got the ball is the less that the other team has the ball when you play their style of ball. Like, it's like Iowa football, Like, why would you want to try and run the hurry up offense? That's pointless when you're trying to play the way that you want to play. So it's like, there's no reason to be in a rush, but that's what teams have done a good job of with them, is putting on that pressure and just rushing, speeding them up mentally as much as anything, where it's like they all of a sudden start to feel some of the pressure of an extended 1-2-2 or something like that. And it just is, it kind of snowballs on them at this point, and they don't really handle the ball confidently against pressure. And then all of a sudden you've got 16 turnovers, and it's just like just a mess. But I think Iowa State will be okay in the long run. It just got to get through these couple weeks, I think.
Well, I would imagine TJ's been hammering that home too on the offensive end, like realizing their defense is so phenomenal. They're going to have possessions on defense where they're making teams work 20, 25 seconds in the shot clock. So using that as advantage, doing the same thing down the floor, extends Wisconsin kind of has mastered that. When Coach Ryan was there, and Greg Gard has kind of instilled that too, that their defense is so solid that they're going to rely on getting stops. And really their only job is getting great shots on offensive end in good amount of time, not forcing it, not taking the first good look, making a great look, and playing to their game and not allowing teams to try to alter that.
All right, another story in college basketball came out yesterday. This is wild. This is a wild story. I think we covered this when it first happened, the Darius Miles story with where he was arrested and charged as I think an accessory to capital murder. It comes out yesterday in court as part of a testimony from Tuscaloosa police that Alabama freshman star Brandon Miller had brought his then teammate Darius Miles the gun that was used in a January 15th fatal shooting of a 23-year-old woman. There is a pretty vivid description of how this all went down in a story on Alabama.com, but basically he brought the gun, sat in his car, and watched someone shoot someone. And then when asked about it yesterday, this was Alabama head coach Nate Oates' response, and one of the most remarkable quotes I think we're ever going to see in college sports. He said, "Yeah, we knew about that. Can't control everything anybody does outside of practice. Nobody knew that was going to happen. College kids are out. Brandon hasn't been in any type of trouble, nor is he in any type of trouble in this case. Wrong spot at the wrong time." Wrong spot at the wrong time. Potentially the understatement of the century from Coach Oates there. What did you think when you just saw this story? This is absolute lunacy all around.
Well, let's not forget this is the same guy that called Ray Lewis about how to handle the team. So I'm not shocked about the comment. I will say this: I tried reading this comment, reading the story, and play from both sides and his perspective, because I know this will come full circle in a second for those who are listening, but I know what players can mean to coaches, right? Like you're promising their mom and dad, you're going to take care of this young man when he comes to college. You're going to do everything possible to protect him, all this stuff. So I understand where he's coming from that aspect. However, we're talking about a case that a young girl got murdered, and I mean it's not looking great for what's going on the defense side. I think where he messed up was that last sentence: wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. All
you needed to say was, we're praying for the victim's family, and we're giving the cops everything they need for the case. That's all he needed to say. So it's more on the social media side. I don't know what the SID was thinking. I'm sure that he was briefed beforehand, maybe.
Yeah.
But
and that's what, to me, I wondered if it caught him off guard, because it's almost like we knew about that.
Yeah.
And that to me too, probably a red flag. Right. We knew about that. He's not in any trouble.
Yeah.
Man, it is hard to justify. I know the guy's a kid. I know he's 18 years old. He's obviously incredibly talented and is going to make a lot of money playing the game of basketball. But man, to insinuate someone delivering a murder weapon to the scene of a crime not being in trouble is a stretch, to say the least. And I understand where you're coming, like what you're saying, that surely Nate Oats is doing this to protect Brandon Miller. Obviously, I think that he's doing this to protect Brandon Miller. But man, it could not have come off in a more insensitive way. And I'm not saying that Brandon Miller should have been suspended for the season, because I don't think that he should have been, probably, depending on the details, which they seem to have more details, obviously, than what any of us do. But we're talking about accountability for officials and like all these kinds of things. How can you tell me that Brandon Miller did not sit out one game when this was alleged? And they instantly kicked Darius Miles off the team. Instantly. And that, to me, tells me everything I need to know about this situation. You want to know why? Because one, well, obviously Darius Miller has been charged. Maybe if Brandon Miller had been charged with something, it would have been different. But I find that hard to believe based on the way the pattern of behavior here. Brandon Miller averages like 19 points a game. Darius Miller was injured for the rest of the season and averaged 2 points a game. Do the math. Why does one guy get kicked off instantly and one guy doesn't? And that, to me, is what was such an issue about it, or why I had such an issue with it, was it was such a clear double standard for the fact that one guy is a really good player. And it's just unfortunate. If this continues to get press, it would not shock me if Nate Oats got fired for this, because this is a really, really bad look. Like a really, really, really bad look. And can't afford to have it at a place like Alabama, man. Just can't afford to have it.
I think what we're seeing this year is more of an eye-opening. I mean, NIL goes along with this too. I mean, you look at the Coppin State headline that happened earlier in the season, Chris Beard, this. I mean, you go down the line, so many.
New Mexico State's
hardly talked about because there's been Amani Bates situation. There is so much to point to of everything that's wrong with college sports and has been wrong with college sports. And this is everything that I advocated for way back before NIL was a thing. And you stated it perfectly, there's a lack of accountability in every facet from the NCAA to officials to universities. Universities might be the ultimate where the crime takes place of accountability. Look at down just the headlines I was just talking about. Everything possible. Chris Beard almost coached that night of when he got arrested.
After being in jail. Yeah.
After being in jail. They waited till the last minute to something come out. every single thing is so money driven, so money hungry in college sports. And this year, I think with NIL in the headlines, it has gone to the point where people need to realize how fucked up college sports is. And it's not as of an amateur and sanctuary safe spot for these college athletes to thrive, to become young adults, because it's never been like that. And it hasn't been.
Because there's a lot of people out there that are doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yep.
You know, that's what this tells me about Nate Oats. And I don't know Nate Oats. I have people who are close to me who are really good friends with Nate Oats. And, but I don't know him from nothing. But I would say right now, this tells me right now that Nate Oats is not thinking about the right things. If this is the way that he handled this situation, you know. And I understand that you're under a lot of pressure to win. I understand that they have a very, very good team. But, man, we can't have it. We can't have it in college sports. What's the goal? Is the goal to win games and to make coaches big money? Or is the goal to mold good young men who are going to be good citizens and good fathers and good husbands, like what coaches always want to try and spout that bullshit, you know, and try and tell us all that shit? Because if that's true, then you hold people accountable and you try and make people understand understand the mistakes that they make and the fact that those mistakes have ramifications. If you just let people do whatever they want to, and you let people, you say, oh, we can't control everything anybody does outside of practice. Bullshit, bro. Like bullshit that you cannot tell me that you can sit here and say something like that as your players are going and murdering someone. Like that's insane, you know? And to explain that away, that tells me right there, you're not worried about the right things. You're not thinking about the right things. And that's not because you need to be out there controlling what your players do. That's because you need to be out there instilling the right kind of values and bringing in the right kind of people into your program that aren't going to even put themselves in this kind of situation. And that's what's really disappointing to me, because I've always thought that Nate Oats was a really good coach. And it's been fun to watch that Alabama team start to come together, especially after this, where you kind of felt like, oh man, like this was a trying thing for them. Well, yeah, obviously. Like now we find out more and more, like obviously it was a really trying thing for them. And it was like, but not in the way that we thought it was. And it just is gross. Like it makes me feel gross sometimes when these coaches go and do things like this.
And it's just countless occasions. I mean, a couple years ago too, Western Michigan athlete murdered. I don't know who it was on campus, but another person he was friends with or someone he's caught up with. It happens every single year. There's situations like this occur, and every single time it should be more of an eye opener for all these people on the outside to realize this isn't about college kids being better young men. This is a business. It always has been a business. It's about making money, about universities making money, about these coaches continue to fill their pockets, and everything the NCAA continues to try to make this about the kids. It's not. And that's everything I was always advocating for. And you'll continue to see that with me standing up to NCAA, because that's where it starts with. It starts with these NCAA officials not holding these schools accountable, these schools not holding these coaches accountable, these coaches not holding these kids accountable. It's a trickle effect. It always has been. And it will continue to get worse the more the NCAA continues to not get involved.
I'm going to tell you right now, it would not shock me at all if Alabama's been cheating their asses off too. Like,
without a question, dude.
And that's the thing. Like, it's not. I don't want to compare it to this because it's not the same. But man, like it's like a modern day version of the Day of Bliss thing at Baylor. Like it's almost a modern day version of it, you know. And it's not quite there, but it's a couple steps short of it. And that's where we're gonna find out more about it, you know. And that's the thing that I think these coaches forget sometimes is like, this is all like public record, you know. And to think that they could just never, like, that no one would ever say anything about it and, like, no one would ever find out and, like, it would just kind of fly under the radar. Because you already know, Nate Oats did come out and apologize and say that he made the, you know, basically, I think, tried to say he was taken out of context, but, like, apologized for that. And it was just, he was not taken out of context, for full disclosure. But it was one of those things where you felt like it was him understanding that he had fucked up. And he's like, damn, I got to backpedal this really fast. But the damage, I think, has been done because it showed his true colors of what he's focused on, you know. And we're going to find out more about this. And if it comes out that, you know, they've been cheating and all these kinds of things that are going to come out as part of some of an investigation like this, then everybody who gets punished for it deserves that, in my opinion, because it just is, there is something that's clearly amiss, you know. Like, you can tell when a program is just like gone bad, you know, not like the basketball has gone bad or anything, but like this, there's like something that's like
integrity of the program.
Yes, yeah, where there's like a fungus that's growing inside the building that's like slowly just like taking over the program. When you have someone that murders somebody else and then you have somebody who takes him the gun, that leads me to believe that you've got that evil fungus growing in your program right now. And that is really scary. You know, you do not want that at the end of the day.
I've always hated the term, the culture issue. It's a trickle down effect. Right. Everything that the coaches have believed in, everything they've preached, it's all bullshit. I mean, I've said this from day one. Majority of college coaches are shady. Majority of them are. It's a proven fact. The majority of officials have bias. It goes along with the same stepping stone.
Let me ask you this. If you're voting for a first team All-American today, do you put Brandon Miller on there?
Well, it depends who you're asking, because same thing. The 2 hours talking about shady, like, reporters are the same way. A lot of reporters, what do they care? They're not gonna go against a kid that's gonna be making millions of dollars. I don't know.
I think I'd have a hard time. I don't know. In my, you know.
No way in hell would I. I mean, you thinking All-American?
Can't do it. Yeah, can't do it.
You thinking All-American? I always consider it's just the same thing with.
That's a character. I mean, yeah, what happens on the floor is obviously important, but like being a good person, being someone that people can look up to, being a, you know, we talked about whether or not athletes are role models, but it's like being a person that a little kid can look up to, you know, can look up to and be like, man, I want to be like that guy, you know, like.
And it's not even that though. Like, you don't even have to be a role model, just being a decent human being. Like,
be a good example. Be a good example. Set a good example for what people should be.
Yeah, you don't have to be a fantastic human, like a role model for a kid to follow. Like, I totally agree with you, Jared. Yeah, that should take a part, but just being a decent human being at the end of the day.
Yeah, and doing this is not being a decent human being at the end of the day. Tough scene. It will be interesting to follow this story as more of the fallout kind of comes into view. All right, last thing, a little bit change of tune here a little bit. Do you have that video? Can you pull that up? I think I've got it too. I just got to figure out I've got to figure out how to share my screen. All right. Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right. I'll edit all this out. All right. We talked a couple weeks ago about the ass dropping third graders.
Our boy is back.
Yeah, your boy is back. Turns out he's the number one recruit in the class of 2032. What's his name? Kason Engert, the number one recruit in the class of 2032. This kid is a hooper, dude.
There
he is. There it is. When have you ever seen a third grader stop and pop like that? Oh, yeah, or finish with the left hand. But, like, the stop and pop, like, that's impressive. I mean, what a pass.
It's a hold to follow through on.
Do you think that the ass drop is going to become, like, his thing?
I hope not. He's going to be made fun of a lot.
He's going to become a college All-American, and he's going to be dropping ass in the timeouts, and we're going to be wondering if that should disqualify him from being an All-American.
Is that a technical if that happens in college basketball? If Patrick McCaffrey would have dropped ass at the free throw line, that's a distraction for the free throw.
I saw someone tweet yesterday that now at the Nebraska State Wrestling Tournament, when someone backflips after winning a match, that will lose that'll lose a team point. It deducts a team point. And the guy that tweeted out says, "Good, finally." And I was like, "Get the hell out of here, man. Come on, bro."
The old heads that are, I don't know.
If you did that in basketball, it's a technical. If you did that in baseball, you're getting ejected. What are you talking about? Like, get out of here, man. Get out of here.
I have a little story to share. I wasn't gonna share
Okay.
it, but I was getting my hair cut, and I supposedly there was an Iowa State guy that came in the day before me, and it was talking about my tweet about the officials. I don't know exactly what was said, but supposedly he was talking shit about me tweeting there was a bias
Oh, jeez.
with and suppose he was like 65, 70 years old. And so another old head, just I don't know. I feel like
Where'd you go? Where'd you go? You don't have to say specifically, but just somewhere
I was in
downtown.
Des Moines. Yeah, I was in Des Moines.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I just maybe the older I'm getting, usually it's my age that should be talking shit, right?
I gotta send you to Blades, man. Those are my guys. They'll take good
Blades?
care of you. Yeah,
Oh,
they'll
yeah.
take good care of you. There won't be anybody talking any shit to you in there. I promise you.
No, he wasn't talking shit to me. He was
Or talking shit about you. Yeah. Well, if they are, it won't get back to you at least.
But my thing is, Jared, you're a grown ass man
Yeah.
translating my tweets into real life and then talking shit about me to other people behind my back.
See, but here's the thing. Like, you have to remember, to someone like that, you're not a real person.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and not saying that's the right thing. You're a character in the TV show. You know what I mean?
It's just kind of cringe to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I get it, dude. Like, believe me, I get it. But it's like I said, like, to people who are not, when you're not closely tied to it, you forget that these are real people sometimes.
Yeah, like actual human beings.
Yeah. Like, and then all of a sudden you get there and you're like, oh, Jordan Bohannon's just a normal guy.
Right.
TJ Otzelberger's just a normal guy. Fran McCaffrey's just a normal guy. Like, these are just normal people, and all of a sudden, like, some of the, like, illustrious of it goes away. But it's like, at the same time, like, people expect you to, or like expect something from you and hold you to some standard that it's like, that is not realistic. It's like, I'm not like a character in your TV show,
Not a little puppet. And I have a right to have an opinion about some things in life.
I don't know. The old heads think you haven't earned it yet. You gotta have some good takes so that you can earn to have a few bad ones as well.
I guess so. I guess playing the most games in college basketball history doesn't warrant a opinion about officials that I've seen on a.
What do you know about their education? They went to the school of hard knocks, bro.
Fair enough.
Where you been? University of Iowa? Never heard of it. I went to the school of hard knocks. Hard knocks in the mean streets.
Walked up both ways to school in the snow.
Yeah. Walked up both ways to school in the snow, and the officials were completely non-biased the entire time.
Unreal.
Oh man. All right, dude. We'll talk again next week. Thanks everybody for listening. Peace.